In this video, I will show you how to create your first server-side Google Tag Manager setup. We'll do that for Google Analytics tags. And at the end of this video, I will show you how to reduce the impact of browser extensions and ad blockers. Let's take a look. Also, did you know that 85% of you who watch my videos are not subscribed? If you want to stay up to date with Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics, and if you want to get this kind of videos first, then subscribe to my channel. First, let's look at the usual way how Web Google Tag Manager works. You have a website. On that website, you have installed Google Tag Manager, and then Tag Manager fires your various tracking codes, for example, Google Analytics. Then Google Analytics takes some data about the page, about the event from the website, and sends it directly to Google servers. For example, the request URL could look like this. We have googleanalytics.com/collect and then some parameters. So this is called client-side tracking. This is happening in the browser. But with server-side tagging, the process looks slightly different. You have a website, you have website Google Tag Manager installed, then you still have Google Analytics installed in the Web Google Tag Manager container, but then instead of sending data directly to Google, you first send it to your own server-side Google Tag Manager container. So we still have the client-side component, but then from your server, you send data further to Google Analytics. Of course, you could also have pure server-side setup. But when it comes to working with Google Analytics, the hybrid setup where you have the client-side tracking and server-side tracking is better. So now you might be wondering, why do we need to add one more layer of complexity? So here are the benefits of server-side tagging. First of all, you may reduce the load on your page speed because technically you could just have Google Analytics installed in your web container. And then from your server-side Google Tag Manager, you could send that same data to multiple vendors like Google, Facebook Conversions API. You can also send that to TikTok or somewhere else. So instead of loading a lot of different tracking codes in the browser, you're loading just one, which again could be Google Analytics, could be something else, and then the heavy lifting is done in your server. Then you can control what kind of data is sent to vendors. For example, if you're working with a company that wants to strictly control what kind of data do your vendors get, then server-side tagging adds an additional layer of control. So that way you could also reduce the risk of personally identifiable information leaks. Then another benefit that a lot of companies are benefiting from is to reduce the impact of ad blockers or other browser extensions that interfere with website Google Tag Manager or other tracking codes that you have on a website. And you can also use server-side tagging to extend the cookie lifetime, and that applies especially for intelligent tracking prevention, where Apple is limiting cookies to 7 days or sometimes to 24 hours. However, not everything is perfect. There are some drawbacks as well. First of all, this is a paid solution. By itself, server-side Google Tag Manager is free, but you have to host it somewhere. So this means that you will have to pay for the server where you're keeping your server-side Google Tag Manager container. Then another drawback is that it's not for everyone. Things can get technical quite fast because you will need to learn not only how your website Google Tag Manager works, but also how server-side Google Tag Manager container works. And there are some differences. Also, it's more difficult to debug because now you have one more place where you will have to check if things are working correctly, and that is server-side Google Tag Manager's preview mode. But that's enough of the theory. Now let's take a look at the implementation. The first step is to create a server-side Google Tag Manager container and host it somewhere. You can host it on Google Cloud, on Amazon, Microsoft servers. You can also use one of the dedicated providers that specialize in server-side Google Tag Manager hosting. And in fact, this is exactly what we will do. In this video, I will be using Stape because it's cheaper than Google Cloud Platform, but it's still very reliable and it's easier to use. Go to tagmanager.google.com and then create a server container. I already have a website container, so in that same account, I will create a server container. So click three dots right here, then create container, then select server, and then name it something like, let's say, the domain of your website, and then SGTM. For example, in my case, I will be working on this website, and I can name it like this, for example. Then click create. Once the server is created, switch to manually provision server because we are going to use Stape and we will need this config right here very soon. Then go to stape.io and create an account. If you're just trying to learn this, they have a free plan which should be sufficient just to play around. So keep looking for something like try for free or sign up or some similar button. Now I will pause the video, we'll create an account, and then I will show you what are the next steps. So click try for free, or if they change the design at some point in the future, then look for sign up or some other button. Then enter your email address and then select where most of your users are located. Are they in the European Union or are they outside of the EU? In my case, let's say that the majority of users are from the EU, so I will select this option right here. So once I will enter the email here, select the server location, and then agree with the terms of use and privacy notice, then I will create the account. So now I will pause the video, finish the sign up process, and then we'll continue. All right, the account is now created. So keep looking for a button that mentions create as GTM container. For example, I have one right here. And then if I go here, I will also see that very same button. So click this button right here. Then you can name this. For example, I will call this GTM Playground. Then we have to enter the container configuration. So that is available right here. By the way, if you at some point close this window, you can reopen it by clicking the container ID. So select manually provision tagging server, copy this, and then paste it right here. And then you can select the server location. Click create container. Then you can select the pricing plan. So in this video, I will select free, but if this was a real project, then at some point you would need to upgrade. So they charge per each incoming request. So if your server receives one Google Analytics event, so that means one request. Let me switch to free and then continue with free plan. So select free right here. Then while we are just working with the free plan, we don't need to upgrade the container to the next tier. But if this was a real project, then you should definitely have this enabled and then continue with free plan. So now you will see your server status right here. And eventually in a couple of minutes, it should appear as a green badge and it should tell that your server is ready. All right, so I waited for about 1 minute, then reloaded the page and I see that my server is now running. An easy way to check if this is working is to go to the domain section, copy this domain, then enter the URL in the browser and then add /healthy. If it shows OK, it means that the server is working fine. Even though technically the second step could be done later, I recommend doing it as soon as possible. And that step is to map a custom domain. You can either have a subdomain, for example, something.mywebsite.com or mywebsite.com/ and then something. So this is called subdomain and this is called the same origin setup. If it is possible in your project, I would suggest doing the same origin setup. And in this video, this is exactly what we are going to do. The steps for the same origin setup depends on where are you hosting your server-side Google Tag Manager container and whether you're using CDN, which is Content Delivery Network, or not. So in this video, I will be using Cloudflare together with Stape. But if you're using something else, then I will post a link to their documentation where they share additional guides for other systems. For example, here we have Amazon's AWS or Apache, for example. To map a custom domain, go to the Stape interface, open your container, and then click Add Custom Domain. Then here you have to enter a subdomain. Even if you are planning to use same origin setup, first you must map a subdomain. So here you can enter something like measure. And then yourdomain.com. Just make sure that this subdomain is not used by anything else. This is reserved only for your server-side Google Tag Manager container. Then click Add CDN, keep the Stape Global CDN, at least in most cases, this will be the option. And then I choose manually in the How to Connect section and click Next. I got an error because apparently I have another test account with the same domain. So I will enter, let's say, data.gtmplayground.com and then click Next. Then I will get two CNAME records that I have to enter in my domain's settings. This particular domain is managed on Cloudflare. So I will go to Cloudflare, then select my domain, then DNS. In your case, you might be using another provider where you manage your DNS records, so you will have to adapt. In my case, I am using this, so I will click Add Record and then select CNAME right here, then enter data. And then the target will be this right here. So copy and paste it. Disable proxying and click save. Then let's add another record where the record is also CNAME and its value should be this. Then paste it and then copy that domain and enter it right here. Disable proxying and click save. Then you will need to click verify, but this might not work immediately. This depends on your vendor where you're managing DNS records. With Cloudflare, it's quite fast. I think it will take like 5 minutes or so. But in theory, with other providers, it might take up to 72 hours to wait. But nevertheless, I will click verify right now, and we will check what will happen. So it tells me verifying, and then eventually when the DNS records are updated and Stape fetches them, then this will be displayed as verified. So for now, I will pause the video and I will continue once this is done. All right, after several minutes, I refreshed the page and I see that my domain is ready. But we are not done yet because, as I've said, we are going to configure a same origin setup. We are going to create a worker that will redirect requests. So for the browser, it will look that we are sending data or we are working with, let's say, mydomain.com and then /something. But behind the scenes, all these requests will be redirected to our subdomain that we have just mapped. This will help with a cookie lifetime extension. In Cloudflare, I will go to workers routes, then click manage workers. But again, if the interface of Cloudflare changes at some point, just keep looking for workers. And then here click create. Then you can select a template, but in this case, we are just going to select the hello world. Click get started right here. Then we can name this to, let's say, SGTM same origin, and then click deploy. Then let's edit the code, delete everything that is available right here. And below the video, you will find a link to another code that we are going to use. Copy that code, then paste it inside the worker. Here we have to rename certain things. First of all, here you need to enter the domain that you have mapped inside Stape. So in my case, it's data.gtmplayground.com. And then you have to come up with some value for the subfolder that you're going to use in your setup. For example, you will have gtmplayground.com/metrics or /analytics or something like that. However, as the time goes by, more and more browser extensions become more aggressive. So if they see something like analytics or /SGTM or something like that, they might block those requests. So it's better to enter something unclear or something unrelated to analytics. Even XYZ can work here. Or you can enter, let's say, AD for analytics tracking or something like that. But again, no, maybe AD is not good because it might be related to ads. So maybe you can enter, let's say, same origin measurement or something like that. And then click deploy. Then go back. Maybe I should go to home, then select my domain, then worker routes, then add route. And here I will enter gtmplayground.com / whatever you entered in that worker. In my case, that's /som, then asterisk. And then we tell that we want to use this worker. Basically, what we're doing here is that if there's any request sent to your domain /this, and then that request also contains something else, then Cloudflare should activate this worker, which will redirect the request to our subdomain that we have mapped right here. So now let's click save. And then several additional steps. So let's go to rules. And here we are going to create a rule. The first rule is the configuration rule. Let's give it a name, for example, SGTM, same origin, SSL, because with this rule, we are going to make sure that our requests work with HTTPS. Then here, select URI path, starts with, and then your path that you used in the worker. And then scroll down, keep looking for SSL, click add, and then full. Finally, click deploy. Then let's create another rule. Which is request header transform rule. And here we will name this as GTM same origin headers. What will happen is that we will add a particular header, which will make sure that all incoming requests in our server show the correct IP address. So in the field, we will select URI path, starts with, and then your path, then select set static and enter X from CDN cf-step. Click deploy. Now let's test if this is working fine. So let's go to Google Tag Manager, then admin, container settings, then server container URLs, add URL, and then enter your same origin domain that you have mapped. In my case, it will be this. If you're using same origin setup, then don't forget to enter the path as well and click save. Then go to workspace, click preview, and the preview mode should load. If it doesn't, you can then close it and try to start it again. Then one more test that we can do is that I can copy the domain with the path. Then I will enter it like that and hit test, for example. You will get an error, which is 400. This is expected. However, in the preview mode, you will see that test right here. So the test request that I did, it is visible right here. One final test that you can do is also to enter healthy. So your domain, then subfolder, and then healthy. And if you get OK, it means that everything is OK. By the way, did you know that I have a bunch of free ebooks on Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics? So if you want to better learn these topics, then click the link below the video, download those ebooks, and get started. After we have mapped a domain, the next step is to configure clients. Clients are gateways that are responsible for picking the incoming request and then doing something with it. The most popular scenario is, for example, when you're sending a Google Analytics request to your server, then a Google Analytics client claims that request and makes data available for tags in the server container. So, for example, one tag could take that data and send it further to Google Analytics, while another tag could send the same data to Facebook Conversions API. What's important to note here is that one incoming request can be claimed by one client. But when that client claims the request, and if it makes data available to the tags, then multiple tags can fire and send data further. When you create a server-side Google Tag Manager container, one client is created by default, and that is a Google Analytics 4 client. Let's take a look at some of the settings, even though there are not many of them. Here you can control the priority. This is useful if you have, for example, multiple clients that can claim the same request, and then in that case, the client with a higher priority would claim that request. Also, this checkbox is responsible for picking up all the requests related to Google Analytics, and there are various paths, for example, G/collect, R/collect, and so on. So if you keep this checkbox enabled, then this client will be able to accept and process various incoming requests related to Google Analytics. Long story short, in many cases, you won't need to change anything here, and this checkbox should remain enabled. Then we have more settings, and here is the place where you can choose how your Google Analytics will identify users. Will it be using only server managed cookies, or will it be using JavaScript managed cookies? If you select server managed cookies, it means that JavaScript on your website, for example, web Google Tag Manager container, will not be able to access those cookies. From privacy standpoint, this option is more secure. However, I have seen some attribution issues with this. So personally, I usually switch back to JavaScript managed and then click save. The next step is to update the web Google Tag Manager setup and tell it to send data to your server instead of sending data directly to Google. So here we have, let's say, a website, we have web Google Tag Manager container, and inside that container, we have a Google Analytics tracking code. So in that Google Analytics tag, or if you have multiple tags, then in all of those tags, we will need to add a particular parameter that tells the tag to send data to our server. Here I have a Google Tag Manager container, which contains the Google Analytics 4 tag, and also has an event tag, which sends the event menu click. And right now, these tags send data directly to Google Analytics. I also have a demo website where this container is installed. So to instruct Google Tag Manager to send data to our server, here's what we should do. We open Google Analytics for configuration tag, also known as Google tag, then edit the tag, and in the configuration settings, add a parameter called server container URL. And here you should add the value, which is your own custom domain that you have recently mapped. In my case, it would look like this. Then I would recommend doing the same thing in all GA4 event tags as well. So if you want to do this and you don't want to manually copy paste everything, then here's what I would suggest. I will cut this value and instead I will create a variable. Click the button right here, then click plus to create a variable. Its type should be constant. And then here's the value. Then let's name this variable and then click save. So this variable is now inserted right here. Then save the tag and repeat the same steps in the event tag. So in the event parameters, you can add a new parameter, which is called, again, server container URL. And then you can add that variable. Or you can also use the event settings variable, but I will not be explaining that in this video. So let's select this and let's add the variable. Even though all event tags inherit the settings from the Google tag, I think this is a good safeguard. So click save. Now let's test if this is working. Click preview in the web container, then enter the URL of the website in the web container's preview mode and click connect. The preview mode has connected. Then since I already had the server container preview mode enabled, I see those incoming requests right here. If you haven't enabled the server container first, then do that now. And then once you enable the server container, like I do right now, then just reload the page where the preview mode is enabled and it will dispatch another batch of the requests. And there we have it. In fact, if I open the website, then go to 3 dots, more tools, developer tools, then network, and then enter /sum because this is part of my server-side container same origin setup. And now if I reload the page, you will see that there is a request. And instead of googleanalytics.com, it is sent to my own server-side container. So in the preview mode of the server container, I can click on any incoming request, then go to the request tab, and I see that it was claimed by this client. This was the incoming request, so all the data that was sent. And then if I go to event data, I will see what kind of information did the client extract from that incoming request. After we checked the incoming request and it looked okay, the next step is to send data from our server further to vendor. For example, in this case, it's Google Analytics. In fact, as I've mentioned before, you can have multiple tags, one tag for one vendor, another tag for another vendor. But in this tutorial, we are focusing only on Google Analytics. In server-side Google Tag Manager container, go to tags, then new tag configuration, select Google Analytics, and then GA4. For the most basic setup, you don't need to do anything because what will happen is that this tag will just take the incoming request and will forward all that information to Google servers. So just for sake of demonstration, let's do that. We are keeping all the settings as they are. And then in the triggering, we have to configure when this tag should fire. Click triggering, and then let's click a new trigger. Don't choose the all pages because this works only with the page view events. But if we look at the preview mode, we have other events too, like scroll, user engagement. So if you want to forward them as well, you should be creating a custom trigger. So click plus, then trigger configuration, and let's select custom. Then here we will select some events, and we care only about those events where client that claimed the request is related to GA4. So we will select a built-in variable, which is client name. And then here we are looking only for those requests where client name exactly matches GA4 because that's the name of the default client. And then we can name this trigger, let's say client name GA4, and click save. So whenever the GA4 client claims the request, this tag will fire and will send all the incoming data to Google. Let's name this tag, for example, GA4, and click Save. Then click Preview. This will refresh the server container preview mode. And now I will just refresh the website because I have already enabled the web preview mode some time ago. So let's refresh the page. We have some incoming requests, for example, page view. And here we see the client that claimed the request. This is the incoming request. And this is the outgoing request that was sent by the tag. If I go to tags while I have selected the event here, and if I click on that tag, this is the outgoing request. And this was sent now directly further to Google. If you want to test if this request was actually properly received by Google Analytics, you can go to GA4, then admin, then in the admin go to debug view, and you should see those requests and those events right here. For example, I sent a page view with this incoming request, and that page view is now visible right here. In the server container, on the tag level, you can control what kind of data do you want to include. For example, if you want to change the measurement ID from one to another, you can insert it right here, and then the server will send data to a different measurement ID. Then you can also completely redact the visitor IP address, because if you keep it as false, then only the last digit of the IP address is removed. Let me show you that. If I go to request, then outgoing request, here is the IP address. So it is anonymized. The last digit was changed, but if I change this to true, then all 4 digits will be changed to 0, which means that Google Analytics will no longer get the IP address. You can also overwrite the event name, or if you want, you can add some parameters or exclude certain parameters. You can also do some modifications with a feature called transformations. But in general, all of these things would go out of scope of this tutorial, because my goal in this tutorial was to show you the first steps how to get started. One more thing that we will have to do is to proxy server-side Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics 4. What it means is that instead of loading your Google Tag Manager container from googletagmanager.com, instead we will be using from your own server container. The same will apply to Google Analytics, and this should reduce the impact of various browser extensions. First, let me show you where the Google Tag and Google Analytics is loaded from right now. So I will open Developer Tools, then enter gtm.js, for example, then reload the page, and here it is. So this container is loaded from googletagmanager.com. If I try to enter gtag, then I see that gtag is also loaded from googletagmanager.com. So many browser extensions will block these requests, but if you proxy them and load them from your own domain, then your tracking setup will become more resilient. In this case, since I'm using Stape, they have a particular feature for that. So let's go to Power-Ups in your Stape container, and then click Use in the Custom Loader. Enable Custom Loader, then Save Changes. Then here you should enter your website Google Tag Manager container ID, not server container, but website container. So you can click here, copy that container, paste it right here, then enable this one, because what this will do is that it will change not only the domain of the requests, but also it will make the parameters unreadable, and I mean request parameters. And this will also help decrease the impact of ad blockers. Then here you can enter your same origin path. And then here you have to select the platform. The platform here is what kind of platform is your website hosted on. Here you can click and see what is currently supported by Stape. So all of these platforms right here have their plugins that you can easily install, and then Stape will handle some things in the background. But if you are using some different platform, then you should click Other, then click Generate, and then replace your existing Google Tag Manager container snippet, and I mean this one. So this in your website source code should be replaced with this modified code. Then once that is done, the custom loader will start working and your Google Analytics requests and your Google Tag Manager container, they will be proxied through your own custom domain. In my case, this demo website is a WordPress site. So I could select WordPress, then click generate, and they will give you some instructions. So what they recommend is that you install their WordPress extension. I have already done that. It is available in the settings. And here, in general, you should click this right here to enable the Google Tag Manager snippet. Then here you will need to enter the web container ID. That is right here. So I will just copy and paste it. Then they will give you the container loading path. And then step container identifier is this one. In your case, of course, it will look different. Since I am on a same origin setup, I don't need to use Cookie Keeper. Click Save Changes. Then it will also not hurt to click Save Changes in the custom loader again. And let's go to the website. I will open Developer Tools. And then first I will enter the part of the subdomain that I have mapped right here. So if I reload the page and I click this request right here, you will see that it's no longer easy to read what this request is all about. But I can tell you that these are related to your Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. Don't worry that here we see the word data or something like that, and this request does not contain the subfolder. For example, in my case, that would be /som. So for Google Tag Manager container request, the same origin setup is not necessary. I mean, the domain can have the subdomain instead. But if I look for the SOM request, here I see a much longer request, and this is related to Google Analytics. So we no longer see easy to read values like event name or what is the event parameters or something like that. All of this has been hidden, and this is done by the custom loader. Also, we no longer see words like GTag in this request. So if you do this, then your measurement setup will be more resilient and will track more data because fewer browser extensions will interfere. Even though this request looks unreadable right here, in the server containers preview mode, we will still see those requests and Step will decode them, and we will still get proper data visible right here, or for example, in the incoming requests section right here. And the final step in this tutorial is now to publish your changes. Previously, with pure website setup, you just needed to publish changes in the web container. Now you will need to publish changes in both containers. You can first publish the server container changes. So click Submit here, then enter a version name and click Publish. And after that, you should go to the website container. And if you have some changes which are not published, for example, I have some of them right here, then you should click Submit, give it a version name, and then publish the website container as well. And there you have it, your very first server-side Google Tag Manager setup. Congratulations, you have made it to the end of this video. But keep in mind that we were just scratching the surface here. There are many more things to learn. For example, how to send data to multiple platforms, how to integrate with external systems like CRM and enrich your data, and many other things. If you want to unlock the real power of server-side tagging, then take a look at my Intermediate Advanced Google Tag Manager course. I will post a link to it below the video. If you found this video useful, hit the like button. That will help me understand what videos do you like and what should I create in the future. Also, if you want to learn more about Google Tag Manager or GA4, then subscribe to this channel. My name is Julius, this is Analytics Mania, and I'll see you in the next video.